Welcome in to a very time-sensitive episode of Betting the Pitch NFL Edition with your host, the real underscore G Warner. I'm here. Get used to it. Across from me is Andrew Schnicker, coming off a 2-0 on best bets last week. So, as you know, we're going to try to go for 4-0 because that's the most we can do for all of our listeners. Thank you for sticking with us throughout this long NFL season. But I think we're rounding the corners. We're starting to make some money. How else are we doing, Andrew Schnicker?
We're doing great. This is a great schedule. And do you want to let everyone in on our plans now going forward because of the 2-0 week?
We're gonna shout it from the mountaintops. Is that our plan? What's our plan?
Yeah, every time possible. And also, you said you're not going to shower again until you lose.
Oh yes. Wasn't sure that I'll hold that up, but at this point, who cares? Only
No,
person that's smelling me is me, and then I guess if I ever get a date, which they always seem to cancel about an hour before it's supposed to kick off. So we'll see if that changes. The nice thing is you can always rely upon Betting the Pitch NFL Edition to come out with an episode. We might have some sojourns during the season if I'm traveling lost in Europe or if Shinny gets COVID for the 15th time. But we're here. We're going to do a 7-pack this week, give you an extra holiday beer because Saturday has 3 games. Not all of them are beautiful. Thursday night is the worst of all. And then Sunday, Monday, and then we, of course, are going to pick the biggest one, America's Game of the Week. So now that we have that all going, we'll start with the Chargers visiting Las Vegas. Did I mention we went 2-0 last week at our best bets? Good. I'm glad. In case you missed it, we did. I'm happy to talk over the Thursday night stuff for now. But there's promo codes in the podcast description if you want to join Bet Online or SportsBetting.ag. I think they're the same site essentially, but they do give you free money right now. So go click on those links below. And then I guess it's now time to talk about the Chargers visiting Las Vegas. Maybe the least attended NFL game in history because there's no road team crowd that's going to matter here in Vegas potentially. Because everyone in San Diego hates the Chargers. No one in Los Angeles cares about them. And we've seen a big, dramatic Justin Herbert injury that is now out for the season. Thank you for my fantasy team. I'm really looking forward to that. I don't know who I'm going to pick up. Hopefully, Bajent's available from Chicago.
Maybe Joe Flacco is available.
Oh, yes, maybe. He's probably scooped up at this point. 38 going on 28. But currently, so it opened the Chargers a 4-point favorite. That shows you the significance of a Justin Herbert to Easton Weston going south stick. Visiting Las Vegas, it's went from Chargers -4 down to the Vegas Raiders, a 3-point favorite after being shut out last week. Total has dropped from 42.5 to 34. I feel like we learned on Thursday night last week in the curse of the Patriots and the Steelers, which was actually still a pretty good game, that sometimes the totals can be low enough that it's very possible to send them over. How does this one go over, Andrew Schnicker?
Easton Stick. Well, see, here's the challenge is like he's going to make this start, but he's only going to have 2.5 days to prepare for it. Normally I could say, okay, he's going to get a full week of practice. And so they can find out what works for him. They find out some of the plays he likes, some of the packages he likes. That's going to be a little bit more challenging with only 2.5 days. The Raiders, they've really fallen into a pretty nice little setup. Like last week's game, I don't know if you watched any of it. I put myself through way too much of it. But they've kind of lucked into, with Antonio Pierce as head coach, into these spots where they're in a pretty good position. I think we're starting to see Aiden O'Connell for what he really is. Not that he was a world beater before, but I'm not sure that the Chargers are the team that can expose Aiden O'Connell anymore or show really his true ability. There's just a big mismatch in the secondary. The Chargers in general, you've got defensive linemen calling out the coaching staff, calling out the schemes. It's a mess over there, and I don't know how much longer Brandon Staley has as the Chargers head coach.
Okay, I wasn't sure if he's been fired yet. I mean, that's clearly coming at some
We're
point.
we're recording this on Tuesday, so bear with us on that.
I mean, so it's been a little while since the game ended. Probably could have just kept him. Well, I guess they're at home, so they could have said, "Don't even get on the bus back to the hotel." But I think he was driving. So anyway, Chargers can't run now. They can't pass or have no one reliable to throw the ball. Makes me really like the Vegas Raiders -3. Pretty much a neutral site, and I don't like paying that tax for being the quote unquote home team. But That's my interest there. I don't see a lot of points in this one, but I think that's more than enough time spent on a Thursday night game that I think I'm going to try to make another scheduled date to get canceled, just so I can really tune in for that game on Thursday evening. Moving to Saturday, we got three pack of games. We got Minnesota at Cincinnati, open to pick 'em, but since the coming of Jake Browning has occurred, maybe Minnesota scoring 3 points at the end to win a game at Las Vegas, as just mentioned. Maybe that has something to do with it. But the Bengals have climbed to 3.5 point favorite. Total has dropped from 40.5 to 39. Are you a believer in this Jake Browning? That's probably the quarterback I should pick up, but he's definitely owned. And I think he's had over 27 fantasy points at quarterback in standard leagues the last couple weeks, which is pretty good performance. Not sure how he does that against Minnesota's good defense, but I think they're going to be set up with a lot of short fields if Josh Dobbs plays. If not, it's Nick Mullen. I don't really know what's going on with Minnesota's quarterback room, but it doesn't seem like they have anything good behind Kirk Cousins' injury way earlier in the season.
Yeah, Jake Browning has been better than I expected. He's beating up on some teams that their secondaries are in the bottom 10 secondaries rated in the league. So yeah, he's taking advantage of those moments. But Minnesota's defense has become really the shining part of their team. Nick Mullins is, I think, I feel like within the market, people like Nick Mullins because what we saw with him when he was in San Francisco, but Kyle Shanahan leading that offense. And no, this is not necessarily a knock on Kevin O'Connell. It is a little different though with what they gotten with potentially Justin Jefferson missing, going back onto the injured list.
Yeah.
So the question, I think you've started to see in the market people buying low on the Vikings. I think it was at some point +4, maybe even higher. And so now we're hitting at a 3.5. To me, I want to see Browning prove it against a defense that's really, really good. Brian Flores is doing the right things there. So I would pay to see Browning do it again against somebody who's going to take away some of his edges, take away some of his advantages.
I think we've had concerns about Cincinnati running the ball for years now, and that
Yeah.
offensive line, it's definitely morphed into something better than the previous swinging gate formation that it was before. I do wonder, I mean, 3.5 feels pretty low considering Cincinnati's success, how well they've done. Yes, it was with Joe Burrow under center, and there's been some times even this season where even with him, they were not very good. But I think the biggest question is the Minnesota's ability to score if Cincinnati are able to take a lead. And I mean, I thought they were pretty dominant against the Indianapolis Colts. I think off of really poor decision making, luck, whatever you want to call it, it was tied at halftime, but a 14-0 lead probably should have been bigger. Certainly not 14-14 tied if I remember correctly, but that wasn't really a game of many close games in the NFL this weekend. I'm tempted to say that happens again. It's a shorter week. Saturday's not that big of a difference from Sunday, but it does matter at least a little bit. And I think that does provide some advantage to the home team. Minnesota, I'm still questioning their offense. I mean, their defense was so good in that home game against the Chicago Bears. They lost, I think, 5 field goals. So I just don't know necessarily that there's enough there on the Minnesota side. So I don't really know. Yes, I see it up to 5, then bet down to 3.5. So it looks like there was some buyback potentially, but that was based on the line moving 3.5 points already to where it currently sits and was 5 points from the initial pick 'em. If we're trusting those opener numbers, I guess. But I don't know what number I'd want to back Minnesota here. Yes, getting more than a field goal is a lot in the NFL these days on the road, but I feel like this is Cincinnati or nothing for me at the moment. And again, another game where it's like, where do you find 40 points? I'm not sure where to see that.
Yeah. And you're also, it's hard when you see what you could have had, right? When you could have had the Vikings at 5, and at 4, it makes a different conversation. Cause I think we've probably, I actually think this will probably go lower. So if you do have interest in the Bengals, it's probably worth waiting closer to kickoff. Let's put that one in to monitor for later this week.
I mean, I would love to see if Cincinnati drops to 3, that protects you on that field goal as time expires. Victory from a tie game doesn't always happen, of course. There's a lot of 2-point wins and stuff like that this year, but that might be a buyer price for me. I don't know if it gets there. Moving next to Pittsburgh at Indianapolis. Opened at Indianapolis -2.5. It's still there. The total was 39. It's now 42. I don't know if that means that Mitchell Trubisky is not starting. I don't think that's the case because Kenny Pickett was still what I saw up at the top of the stadium for the last game that was on Thursday night. Yes, there's some more rest advantage here. Indy looked pretty bad at Cincinnati, but the spread hasn't really moved. Maybe that's what happens when Pittsburgh loses to the worst team in the world on Thursday night for everyone to watch. I don't really know where to go with this one. The Colts, I've been wrong the last 2 weeks on them, unfortunately. One that was ridiculous because Ryan Tannehill can't remember how to hold snaps, which he did, I think, his whole career at Texas A&M. But then I guess got a big contract in the NFL and just forgot everything before that. I know that's still grinding your gears,
And
but
he was a wide receiver too. He should have those hands. Should be able
yeah, wide receiver turned savior of the program at quarterback. But I guess that's an Aggie thing. So we'll let them do their little whoops or get their yell leaders involved to watch their college basketball game this weekend. Get Memphis, big favorite, and took a big L as well. Tough for them. But with that said, Pittsburgh, great defensive line, but TJ Watt probably concussed. I'm not sure what his status will be for this one. And I think they also lost another pass rusher early in the game. I can't remember his name off the top of my head, but against New England. So Pittsburgh suddenly becomes a lot more mortal, human, whatever, if their D line isn't superhuman, and they have nothing at quarterback. So, am I going to back Gardner Minshew yet again? Because it was really not that fun last week.
Right. I like I've said, I took the Colts under in their season win total. That was a loss. Every time I've bet on or against the Colts this year, I have lost. So you can assume that I will not.
All right. So, what are the loser point of views here then?
There we go. So whatever I say, you just take the opposite, and then everyone you should be fine. Um, I think the Colts should be able to run the ball. The Steelers defense, you and I maybe we've hyped, not maybe, we probably have hyped them more than we should have. They have the names, and yes, they can make a difference. The turnovers and their ability to score off of their defense has been
It's like second to none based on how
it's like a
quality
winning
their team is.
solution for like some of the games they've won this year are because of the defense creating points. Um, God, the Colts secondary is just so bad. It's been
But no
so
one's going to take advantage of that because even if Kenny the Dream Pickett after watching Mitchell last week, I mean, he's not good either.
And maybe that's where we're seeing someone get cute with the total and pushing this up is the expectation. Okay, the Steelers defense, um, without Watt, without really a good run defense, Colts should be able to move the ball. Trubisky should be able to do enough in the air against a secondary that has no interest guarding any receivers truly. And so, yeah, maybe you can squeeze out some explosive plays, Colts on the ground, Steelers through the air with Pickens or someone like that. That maybe I can see that total, but that's not where I would prefer to go because I'm just not a fan of what the Colts are. I don't think any part of their team is like a winning recipe in the NFL. And they feel very much like kind of like the Giants last year, where they've just kind of fallen into these wins, and there's no reason they should be as good as they are, or no reason they should have the win-loss record they do.
All right, so Colts the second round of the playoffs. You heard it here.
Yep.
We'll move next to the nightcap on Saturday. Probably the best of the three. Denver visiting Detroit, and this is a matchup that is potentially some playoff implications. At least, certainly right now there are. Detroit. Wow, he's just mixing in the Tigers.
Okay.
It's been a while since I talked about baseball, but here we go. Detroit. They opened a 4.5 point favorites, climbed to 5. Total at 47.5 has stayed the same. You don't see that too often. Denver with a really controlling, dominant victory at the Chargers last weekend with a lot of fans in town. Won't have the same crowd advantage in Detroit. Also, you could argue that got Justin Herbert hurt, and that kind of changed the game quite a bit, though I feel like Denver was up early and just made it a lot easier for them to hold on for dear life. That didn't end up happening. Detroit, I think we both got your best bet, which I don't know if I mentioned this 2-0 last week on our best bets, but Sugar gave out the Chicago Bears. I followed him along. That was the easiest bet of the 12 p.m. Central Time window. Hope to have a lot more of those. So it wasn't as easy, I think, as the final score looked. But ultimately, Justin Fields looking great, and Detroit again really struggling. And I feel like they should have lost their last 3 games, if that includes the Chicago game, the first time that they choked up a 9-point fourth quarter lead or something of that
Yeah,
nature,
push it
or
back to
lost by 9.
4. We're talking that's 4 weeks, but yeah, because they're the Saints game in between there,
They were
was
getting
aided by a lot.
massacred.
They a lot of defensive touchdown or a lot of short fields. Let's say it that way.
Excuse me. So that was a win for Detroit because they were up
Yeah.
huge on the road, if I
Yep.
remember correctly, and then did give up 1 million points to New Orleans, which was a combination of their quarterback who can't throw and then Jameis Winston. I think Denver getting 5 points. I mean, more than a field goal here. It's really weird to be in this position now, but yes, you got to worry about Detroit in the fast track. If you believe that, I think you do more than I do.
Yeah.
But Denver's been really good in a conservative way when letting Russ cook. You're not letting him cook. He doesn't throw a bunch of picks like he did against Houston. But Denver's been really solid. They've been winning turnover battles, which is like a very lucky thing and not something you expect to continue forever. But it's been winning them games, getting them back in this playoff hunt. And they're facing a team that's been really struggling that they can lose by a field goal and still cover, or even more than that potentially here. Talk me off Denver.
Well, I don't. Let's look at it like, I mean, Detroit has the talent advantage. Okay, yes, you agree? I don't know.
I like their offensive weapons better. I do.
The offense, it still always goes. We try not to just boil it down to what the quarterbacks are, but Jared Goff at the beginning of the year, it didn't all those the home road splits, the outdoors versus indoors, like it didn't matter. He was lighting everyone up, and now we're seeing kind of the Jared Goff that most people are familiar with, which has just been a mess. And you have a defense that isn't staying in its passing like its rush lanes. It just looks undisciplined. There's really no redeeming part on that side.
I think they also had a
Um,
really big nose tackle injury that
they
missed
did.
Sunday's game, if I remember correctly. Of course, I don't know the fat guy names, but there we go.
Actually, I don't know that one either. And that's usually my
Really
thing.
sad for the offensive defensive trenches guru on this podcast. But the guy that's nose tackle important for Detroit missed the Chicago game. At best, if you come back, we'll see how healthy you can really even be. Anyway.
So it feels very much like Denver is going to follow their same recipe where they keep pounding the ball, take advantage of a defense that lost. They got rid of some of the guys at the trade deadline and switched up some of the depth chart. And it's less talented, but the younger guys are proving to they're playing with a different sense of urgency. And I mean they have a great system. Like they know exactly what they want to do. To me though, it just starts feeling like kind of like that Texans game where you're facing a team with an offense that's pretty explosive. And if you get in catch up mode, that's not where you want to be, as you talked about with letting Russ cook. That would be my concern is if Goff is right and he's able to have time, if they start trying to chase, then five may not save you. That would be my only side, the other side to look at.
Okay, so I think that's a fair statement. A lot of times with underdogs, they don't really get back inside the number too often. I think that's more of though of what my take for college basketball specifically. There are college basketball podcasts on this betting pitch feed, FYI. Also, plenty on pregame as well that I do with AJ Hoffman. So stay tuned for those. But I think my real thing about the NFL with 7 point touchdowns most of the time, if your kicker's competent, then it's not that hard to get back within that number five. I mean, if you're down 10 late, you just got to hope they don't kick a field goal to get that within one score. Instead, scoring a touchdown would be huge. Always a question, of course, late in games, and you never know if that's going to matter. But Ali McNeil, I think, is the name, went on injured reserve.
Okay.
So that's at least 4 weeks. So he will not be back for this one. Denver's never really been that impressive on offense or running the football, but they've been getting, I think, a lot more out of Javonte Williams, who's getting further and further from his, I think, multiple knee
Mhm.
tearing injury, blah, blah, blah. Probably a better way to say that, but as everyone knows, I'm not a doctor. So I like the 5 points. I feel like the total is pretty high, and I think that I think is also backing a Detroit offense that we haven't seen for a little while. I mean, Jared Goff, I'll believe that he protects the ball 10 years after his career is over. I think he's done enough throughout his time that has shown that he's not really trustworthy to win turnover battles. And as we've seen with Russell Wilson, if he's going to hold on to the ball and make the little dump off passes, they're going to run clock the whole time, take it down to 1 second before they snap the ball. I think it makes it really hard for this to go over, and even harder for Detroit to really spread out unless they can get some efficient offense, which we haven't seen for a while. or potentially turn Denver over. And for the most part, we haven't seen that this year.
One other thing, Detroit, they've been willing to gamble on fourth down, which is often a variance type down. During this little slide there, I think they're 2 for 10 on fourth down attempts, and those are basically turnovers. So there the correlation, that really gutsy win against the Chargers probably like a month ago, where they went for it on fourth down and had success. It's swung the other way in the last couple of weeks, and that's the danger of fourth down and the variance there.
Got it. Reversion to the mean, or potentially they just continue to be the Lions, and that's why they've struggled lately. We'll see. Moving to Sunday night, we'll do Sunday night, Monday night, and then come back with the game of the week. As I mentioned, we got Baltimore visiting Jacksonville. Thank God it's not Kansas City at New England. Baltimore opened a 5.5 point favorite down to 3.5. Totals from 39.5 at open to now up to 43.5. Part of me thinks this is about the quarterback situation in Jacksonville with I was about to say Hunter Lawrence, but he's a kicker. Trevor Lawrence, who is somehow never going to miss a game, despite having at least two
Incredible.
injury reports this year that said he was going to be out, and then ended up starting and playing a full game. I don't think he looked like himself. Wasn't a really great matchup against Baltimore, or excuse me, against Cleveland. Now it's a similar type of defensive package, I think, where they're going to rush him a lot and going to see if that ankle if he can move on it. Didn't really look good last weekend. They did potentially come back towards the end to almost cover the spread, but then went for two late to really try to cover the spread and try to take a push.
Yeah.
That was right. I'm not mistaken
That
on
was
that.
interesting. Yeah, oh yeah, that was
Yeah,
right.
I don't
I
know
was
how much
just
money.
more eyebrows raised. I was like, okay, all right.
You
Gonna
never
get it
know if
within
I'm being
two here.
questioned, but I did
No,
have
no,
I think I had two Mountain Dews. That's my Sunday tradition now because I'm trying
getting
to stay
wild on
away.
a Sunday.
Yeah, would be alcohol, but that would put me to sleep. Mountain Dews go the upper direction. Anyway, so what do we got here? Jacksonville, a 3.5 point dog. I've fallen in this trap at home for Kansas City and at home for San Francisco, and I would. It's fairly safe to say I'm not going to have any Jacksonville money because I don't believe in their quarterback situation. I don't really believe in the Jacksonville offense. Their defense, rush defense has been good, but pass defense has been supposedly pretty bad. I think
Yeah.
maybe one of those leads to another. What do we think about Baltimore?
They kind of just played with their food last week, don't you think? I mean, the weather wasn't great. This Rams team is another one of those teams that's just like figured out ways to win. I'm so happy that Puka Nakua is on my fantasy team, but like there's not a lot there. Like the pieces that they've gotten, like they're fantasy football darlings, but the offensive line isn't very good. Stafford feels like he's like put together with scotch tape every single week. Anyways, I
Still
get off.
better than 80% of the quarterbacks in this league, I feel
Yeah,
like.
no doubt. It's incredible
And
what
did they ever tell you that he was the catcher on a baseball team with Clayton Kershaw? I'm
yeah,
not sure
I've
if you heard
heard
that
that.
one.
I
Yeah.
heard that. I've
I
heard
thought
that a
I was
couple of times.
breaking news.
Uh, at Highland Park.
Yes, the rich boys.
They
Yes.
really had to scrap and fight their way to the top of the table.
To the Troy Aikman quarterback lessons camp. Yes, right.
Right, exactly. Uh, yeah, we've done this dance with the Jags getting points at home. Um, I keep going back to their offensive line. There's just massive issues there. If they're a healthy team, I've been a backer. I'm supportive. I like this squad. Um, Ravens, one of those teams that like this actually they bucked the trend last week and didn't play well, but then figured it out in the fourth quarter. Usually they've gotten out to big leads and then messed around at the end to leave the back door open. Yeah. Oh, I would be close to the Ravens, and I don't know if can we do 3 or 3.5 on a favorite again for the second week in a row?
I will not probably be doing that, but you certainly could. I don't think my disinterest is gonna push me to a Baltimore side here. I'll put it
Yeah.
that way. I think Jacksonville has a lot to prove, but I will say that Baltimore has a 1 seed potential. Looks like one of the weakest 1 seeds out there to me. Yes, they've steamrolled a lot of teams, but I don't really know how. Defense is good, I guess, but I still don't trust Lamar Jackson. I really feel like they're triumvirate of running backs is awesome, but they seem to get really big plays, and I think those in playoffs are less and less likely. Certainly are killers if you can get them. So we'll move to Monday night, and then we'll circle back to our last game, since that's the order we usually do it. Monday we have Philadelphia visiting Seattle. Opened a 4-point favorite. Philadelphia did on the road over under at 47. It is now down to 3.5 with a little climb to 47.5. So market's believing a little bit more in the Seattle offense, it looks like, and a little less in Philadelphia. I think you could say that based on Philly getting absolutely creamed in Dallas as my best bet. Did I mention we were 2-0 on best bets
2
last
and
week?
0, 2
There you
and
go.
0.
Okay. Actually, it probably goes the other way.
Other way.
2
There you go.
Yeah.
Yes, that's right.
Yes. We're going to follow it up, that 2-0, with another one of those, hopefully exactly the same way. So Philadelphia, a 3.5-point favorite at Bet Online right now. I like Seattle.
This line's telling me that so Geno Smith is fine. I guess he's going to play because there's no way Drew Lock is only getting 3.5
I mean,
receivers.
there are some friends of ours that believe, or maybe it was a past tense, believed that Drew
Believe,
Lock
not anymore. Man.
the answer at quarterback for the Denver Broncos. I thought it was fairly competitive against San Francisco. I guess that would certainly change things and lower my interest. Geno's been playing banged up, and finally, I guess it kept him out of game. But Philly, I mean, maybe this is their get right game, but they've literally trailed to everyone they've been playing for what feels like months now. Their quarterback doesn't seem healthy, yet they continue to run these quarterback draws, not the Philly tush push, whatever we're calling the thing, not the steak and cheese or whatever it is, or cheesesteak. But I feel like this is a spot for Seattle at home where they played really well in the past. It's been difficult for teams to go in there, like we've been saying all season. NFL home court advantage, home field advantage is less important. But I feel like, yeah, that quarterback stuff is really concerning. But Philadelphia is a big road favorite. It might be one of those hold your nose and just play against them, especially after you watched what happened with the Dogs on Monday night last night.
Doesn't this feel a little bit low to you?
I mean,
Like,
if Drew Lock's starting,
have
yes.
we soured so much? Like, I think from like a public perception, right? Like, someone's going to look at this and be, wait, Eagles are only 3.5-point favorites only, right?
Maybe, but it
No,
also might be that it might be at this point where they're like, well, even if you are betting the NFL for the first time, you've watched the Eagles who, oh wow, they are the best team in the league and they've really been struggling. Yes, they did somehow beat Kansas City. That was undeserved. Yes, they somehow beat Buffalo's undeserved. Finally got their medicine from San Francisco and then also Dallas. I mean, the schedule's been ridiculously difficult.
Yeah.
And it's possible that we are buying or that we would be selling low on Philadelphia playing against them here against a Seattle team that hasn't really looked very good. But also Seattle is very competitive with Dallas with a banged up Geno Smith, scored a ton of points in that game on the road on a Thursday night on a short week, which we've seen like none of that this year. And Seattle, I feel like we're developing a lot of opinions on them, really struggling against San Francisco, who look like the best team since sliced bread. And I feel like there's enough questions about Philadelphia as a road favorite here that's what gets me going. That's what gets the juices flowing right now.
Eagles with the secondary concerns, Blankenship was out. We'll see if he's back because they just don't have a lot of safety help, and that causes some rotation in their secondary whenever he's out. Philadelphia fans they have not always been Reed Blankenship supporters in
Mm,
general,
mm.
but he's been pretty good for them this year, I'd say.
Probably a better
Um,
tackler than Rodrigo Blankenship.
that's true, but not as good of spectacles,
Yes.
right?
Yes.
Right.
Rex specs. Yes. Yes. Goggles, if you want to call it.
Uh, so also like we're kind of glad Philadelphia just went through this gauntlet. Seattle is going through a gauntlet. They have the 49ers on Thanksgiving. They got the Cowboys on Thursday night, got the 49ers again, which was a great spot. 49ers coming off a big road win. Yes, and they hung pretty tough with them. And now they're facing Philadelphia. That's quite a gauntlet. How much can they take when you're dealing with the top of the class in the NFC? Are you able to get up for it 4 straight weeks? I'm not saying I'm not going to have a bet on Philadelphia because it's just the metrics and everything with them right now is screaming that they're not a 10-3 team. But it does make me wonder if Seattle has anything left in the tank for another week.
I mean, you could argue the same sort of thing with Philadelphia, though. They're, yes,
Yeah.
maybe starting from a higher bar, but have had that really, really difficult situation themselves. So I would think the home team is more likely to get rallied behind a bunch of people screaming in a very weirdly shaped, but at somehow decibel levels are high type of football stadium. I mean, we got the Seahawks at 6-7, sitting ninth in the NFC based on a lot of tiebreakers, but ultimately tied for the last playoff spot. If they can get some momentum going, and they don't have to win this game, they can lose by that late field goal and that cover. Jake Elliott's been awesome.
Yeah.
And I feel like at this point, Philadelphia are a team that I might just want to bet against until they prove that um, they're fixed. And I don't even know that they can do that even in a dominant win at Seattle. Then I think it would probably be the narrative of Seattle's not that good. Let's move now to, I mean, we've got plenty of time left. We've been doing well on time. But if there's any, I mean, I do like Seattle here. I don't know what, like, if this hits three, if I'm less interested in Seattle, probably not. I think I just want that push on a field goal. I imagine you might even see Philadelphia get bet here just because the Seattle quarterback situation and Drew Lock certainly would be terrifying against the Philadelphia defense. But to spend a little more time on this, like, is the Philadelphia defense even that strong? I mean, they got the Kevin Byard signing, which I don't know how well that's gone. I feel like there's a reason the Titans were letting him go.
Yeah.
And then I guess we saw a Fletcher Cox touchdown on Sunday, but that was the only thing we saw that showed that the Eagles were anything but dead on the floor, it seemed to me. So a lot of turnovers, maybe that made everything look a lot worse than it
Right.
potentially would have been, though I think Dallas took the foot off the pedal pretty quickly.
Yeah.
And it could have been a much uglier game if that was what was worth it. And Seattle has to go on the road across the country, go win a game by a sizable amount. But yes, it's only a score because football is weird with 7 point touchdowns. But there's a lot I think that this line asks of Philadelphia that I'm not sure that they can write those checks.
Yeah, I think that Philadelphia's offense would have had more to show for it if they didn't have those two turnovers. I know they had three total, but two were as they were marching, correct? Is that right?
I think it was three fumbles, Hurts,
Hurts,
Brown, and
Brown, and Smith,
Smith. Yes.
and I think I mean at least two of those were as they
I
were
was too
marching.
busy celebrating our 2-0 best bet streak
It
to
was no,
really
the
think about
Dallas
it.
was by every, no one's going to just it was 100% the right side. I do think the
Glad I paid extra juice for the -3 though. That
I'm
was really,
sorry,
really, really
but
close.
I cannot in good faith be like, yes, Griffin, just take the 3.5. Like we can't do that.
I mean, at this point, I'm trying to protect myself versus the eventual brutal late touchdown that Carolina's going to score and get a 2 point conversion as a 1-11 team that somehow might cover the spread. I'm glad that did profit for one person on this podcast, though. However, if you have anything more on that one, go ahead, or
No,
I'll move to
let's
our
move on.
America's Game of the Week on Fox or CBS. It used to be obvious who to know was going to
I
be.
don't know.
Not sure who it's going to be. It's probably going to be some combination of Jim Nantz saying, "Tony, shut up. I'm trying to do the sign off on this game like he did last weekend in the Chiefs." But regardless, we got Dallas visiting Buffalo. Open
Fox.
Fox. Okay, so we'll get Joe Buck and Troy Aikman. Psych. We'll get Joe Davis.
Burkhart.
Oh, Kevin Burkhardt. Yes, the former used car salesman. Good for him. There's hope for everyone. Dallas, they opened a 1 point dog at Buffalo. It's now Buffalo -2.5. Total has climbed from 49 to 51. Uh, I'll put it this way. I have not had great success against Buffalo this year, though had a miracle cover with Philadelphia in overtime. Didn't deserve that one. Should have had a miracle cover on Kansas City last weekend if Kadarius Toney knew the rules or anything in life in general. But I feel like Buffalo were dominating Kansas City. Josh Allen throws a pick. All of a sudden, we've got eventually a tie game and then a tie game, and then Buffalo barely wins. We got the weird stuff with McDermott. I can't even I don't think that matters necessarily, but it kind of felt like a hit job was coming from the Buffalo Bills organization setting up for, hey, we don't think this is our guy anymore. I don't know why else that would come out 6 or 7 years later, or ever 20 years later, whatever the number is. Dallas is going to be a very popular underdog here, is what it feels like to me. Maybe Bills Mafia really kills it. The weather would be really awful, but I think that only makes Josh Allen look worse.
True. That's like he didn't. I mean, he wasn't great. Like so. What are we just hanging? Everyone is so confident that the Bills are now like on this trajectory. I was curious about the weather. Weather looks fine.
I mean, they do need to win. That's certain.
Yes,
And
they're
they are going to be a very, I think, popular run the table type of underdog if they
yeah.
get into the playoffs and are on the road 6 straight weeks or something like that.
We're gonna
Depending
have
on how
wind. It's
long.
gonna be windy in Buffalo. So
Great. You know who tries to throw the ball in any conditions, with any coverage, with any sort of thing that especially involves defenders? That is Josh Allen. And I forever am going to look to bet against him until he stops turning the ball over, and he can't do it.
I agree. I 100% agree. And I probably will end up taking the Buffalo Bills this week.
Wow. I mean, Dallas is playing so well. They've been beating up on the Sisters of the Blind. You could probably call the Philadelphia Eagles part of that category right now. They're
Yeah.
basically raiding Vents left and right without a lot of defense mechanisms in any of these places. But defense has been great. They turn you over. Hello, Josh Allen. Buffalo looked really good against what I think is it feels like a corpse of Kansas City, just because they are too cheap to acquire any wide receivers or do anything to try to give Patrick, excuse me. As we're running down on time, I guess I'll leave it here. But it's really hard for me to say no to Dallas number, especially when this hits 3. It probably won't. But sheesh, that's going to be tough for me to resist if it does hit that number. So
Threes, yeah.
for our best bets, we went 2-0 last week. If you're not a member of my Patreon, check it out, patreon.com/real_G Warner. We got links to Bet Online and also the SportsBetting.ag in the podcast description. Good to get yourself some free money. You got to have as many outs as possible so you can get the cheapest plus or cheapest -3 to buy the Cowboys too on Sunday Night Football against the Philadelphia Eagles, then watch them win by 30. What do you got for your best bet, Shinny? I'll leave the floor to you.
It's a game we've already talked about, and I know the number has moved a little bit on us, but I still think there's some value there. And I'm going to be really annoyed if on Saturday morning you say you're going to fade me, but I'm going to take the Vikings plus 3.5.
All right. I don't know that I'm going to fade. I mean, at 3, it's a very different bet than I think than 3.5.
That is true.
Certainly, it would be pointing in certain directions. I don't think I'm going to rush to lay points with the Brown inning. But we'll see.
But you're a favorite player now. You play
Oh,
favorites.
yes, that's right. I'm just
That's what Griffin does.
a leopard has completely changed his spots. He's now just a leper with no D. So this is Betting the Pitch NFL edition. I'm your host, real_G Warner. You just heard A_SCHNITKER on Twitter. He just gave you the Minnesota Vikings a 3.5-point underdog on the road on Saturday of the NFL this week. So just make sure you get that bet in. And I guess I need to publish this early so everyone sees it by then. But we went 2-0 on our best bets last week. We're going to keep that momentum going. As I mentioned, A_SCHNITKER already gave you the Vikings plus 3.5. For my best bet, I'm going to ride a weird sort of momentum. The Tennessee Titans, a 2.5-point favorite at home to the Houston Texans, had a miraculous comeback victory on the road at Miami. But I think there's some big concern. I have some big concerns about Houston. The market has not really bought into them all season. They've made them really short favorites against some of the worst teams in the league. And now they go in division to Tennessee, who now has some life. Yes, they've already gotten rid of Kevin Byard, but I feel like they win this game. Houston really struggles on the road and just struggles in general, and they don't live up to the high expectations that have been placed on them earlier in this season. And that'll do it. Do you have any thoughts? We got a minute and 10 seconds before we kick this off.
I love it. I mean, I wouldn't expect anything less with the Titans pick, but I absolutely love it. Although we didn't go with the Titans when we should have on Monday night. Like that was peak Vrabel underdog situation.
I mean,
we failed.
It's just setting me up for a lot of my anti-Miami bets coming forward because that confirmed an assumption that I really felt. Anyway, thanks for tuning in. Please click the links in the podcast description if you want some free money at casinos. It's better to win with their money. I think it makes them feel a lot worse, and we're always here to try to bash the book. We'll see you next Tuesday. This might kick us off before I finish the sentence, so thanks so much for tuning in. We'll see you all very, very soon.